Gen Zs are those people who are what we call digital natives.
They don't have to wait. They've never had to wait. They've never learned to wait, and they can't deal with waiting.
Yeah, they've grown up on the dopamine hit of likes, shares, comments on their socials. You know, they don't want to wait 6 months for a review. They need to know quickly and often how they're going.
It's not a one-way street. They have to adapt back the other way as well, or honestly they're going to come up against some pretty big challenges themselves.
It's rage against the machine because society is different. Society's not going to change just to suit you and your business. As a business owner who's built your business on hustle and doing the hard yards, dealing with young people of today who want flexibility, purpose and everything now, and an SMS instead of a phone call can make you lose your mind. Now tune into this episode where we dig into what makes the Gen Zs work and how you can build a team culture that works for them without destroying your will to live. Welcome to the podcast. Tony Fraser-Jones here, your host, with my good mate, co-host Phil Smith.
G'day, mate.
You doing well?
Always good, mate. Always good.
You're ready for a discussion of the generations?
Oh, yeah. Let's discuss that. All right,
Let's
we're
discuss
talking
it.
about how you have worked hard, hustled, and ground it out to build your business, and you did what you were told as an apprentice, and you were grateful for the opportunity at the time. You know, now your young employees, unfortunately, seem different. They want to take over the world straight away without putting in the same kind of hard yards as you did, and it leaves you feeling frustrated and angry.
It can do your head in, and you start wondering, is it just this employee or are all young people, young kids like this today, and what's gone wrong with the world? Why can't people just be like I was when I grew up? And it can really mess with your head. And I think the thing is that as a society, things do change, and the kids growing up today are different from their parents and their grandparents, and they have different beliefs and different experiences, and they're growing up in a different world. And this is really nothing new. If you think back over the years, you've got the silent generation, you've got the baby boomers, you've got the, Gen Zs?
Gen X.
The millennials, and Gen Z. And they all, take different time periods. And they are different because their experience growing up is different. When we grew up, well, me, probably not you, being a young fella, but, we still had phones that were attached to the wall.
Yeah, I was there for that. Thanks.
And in actual fact, we had phones that you actually had to call the operator to put you through if you wanted to make a long distance call. You probably can't remember that.
Well, I remember having a dishwasher, whereas you remember sticking the plate under the sink and the dinosaur licked it off, right? So
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
The old foot pedal car.
That's right. And then obviously, kids of today are very different. It's a different experience. There is, telephone with pictures. We could just not imagine that when we were kids growing up. It was like, how would that like be a TV on the wall? Well, now it's, a small handheld device, and we WhatsApp and FaceTime all the time. So it is very different, and that has actually impacted on the attitudes and the way people roll. So this is important to understand rather than just getting, really frustrated, which I understand because there is a little bit of clash of culture sometimes. We really want to dig into that because, you can argue against this as a business owner and get frustrated, or you can really get on board with it. You can understand where the different generations are at. You can make it work for you and for them. And so today we want to dig into what is Gen Z, what are their characteristics, and more importantly, how do we work with them and help them have a great experience, because obviously they're the future of the workforce. So if we don't do something about it, really we're going to bury our head in the sands and just hope the wind changes, which is not good leadership.
No, it's not. And I'm sure you got a story to kick us off.
Well, a story about burying your head in the sand, really. And most people will remember blockbuster videos. There were just literally thousands of blockbuster videos all around the world, early 2000s even, through the 1990s. They were the king, like they were everywhere. And the kind of Friday night ritual is, you'd go down to the video store, you'd cruise around, and you'd pick out a movie, hope you wouldn't get hit with late fees, and you'd go home and watch the movie. And then came along Netflix, which were initially offering DVD rentals by mail, not even over the web. And Blockbuster actually had a chance to buy Netflix, I think, for about $500 million. I think it was around 2000, and they turned it down because they couldn't actually. They actually believed that people liked the in-store experience and liked all the late fees and all the mucking around, and that streaming movies over the internet would be ridiculous. It's like, there's no way culturally people will do that. Well, obviously that didn't work out so well for them, and Blockbuster is gone burgers, and Netflix is just an absolute behemoth. And so it's very easy to ignore the reality of what's happening, to put your head in the sand, wish things were different, but the world does move on. Just like Blockbuster, the generations and the attitudes that people have, they move on as well. And so I think we need to dig into that so that we can get a good result here.
Yeah, 100%. I think if we don't understand and adapt to the different generations, and in particular for this episode, Gen Z, we're going to run into some issues.
Yeah, well, the first thing is you will have consistent employee turnover. Like you'll just churn people because, and that's a massive cost because they just don't feel valued, they don't like working with you, and that's very frustrating. We've talked in this pod many times about the cost of employee turnover. It's massive. It's like, between 1 and 3 times the cost of their salary, depending on the seniority of the person. The more senior, obviously, the more expensive. So this is a cost that's best to be avoided. And then not only that, you'll struggle to keep people, but you'll struggle to attract people because word gets round. People figure out who the good employers are, so you won't get the good young people. You'll have lower productivity, less engagement, less motivation from the people who are in your business before they exit. And if you don't do this right, you'll probably lose out to competitors who get really savvy about this. And it's no sort of accident, and we notice this in our members, the people who have great social media presence and do a lot showcasing their team and all that sort of stuff on Insta and through the social media channels, they attract the people. And so that's kind of hitting the Gen Zs where they're at as well. Your culture's not going to be strong. You're going to have lots of tension. You'll probably have trust issues. You have miscommunications. You're kind of speaking one language and they can't understand it, and that causes a lot of angst. And this is another one too, is the young Gen Z people, they are the technological experts. They are what we call digital natives. They've grown up in a digital world. And so they are crucial for helping you stay current. How to use AI, how to use your jobbing systems, all that sort of stuff. They're going to do that just naturally. It's crazy, so you'll miss out on that. And at the end of the day, if you don't do this well, your business results are going to suffer, your profits will be down. You'll be under a lot of pressure as an owner, and that impacts you and your family. And it's just not a good thing.
Yeah, 100%. But on the other hand, if we do really understand this generation and we know how to leverage those relationships and get the most out of them, pretty big upsides.
There's a lot of upsides. I mean, you'll have much better employee retention, and that's critical. You'll attract the best talent, because the market for talent is the key to success. You've got to have good people, and that's how you build a business. And that's how you build a business that you can actually enjoy, because you can rely on your good team members. Your productivity goes up. You can be a leader in the field. You can be the place where the Gen Zs want to come and work because they feel like it's the mothership, rather than one of your competitors. And that all builds around a good culture, and it'll allow you to take advantage of their technological, smarts. You can build good technology in your business, good systems, etc. And all of that leads to just a better business, better results, better profit, less stress and time spent for you, and that impacts your lifestyle, your family, it allows you to create the freedom that you really want from a business and that you deserve if you're putting in the effort.
Yeah, 100%. Well, shall we start with maybe just identifying what is Gen Z? Because I'm sure there's going to be some people listening who are like, hey, this sounds great, but what is Gen Z? I'm a little bit behind on that.
Well, yeah. Well, I'm what am I? Gen Z?
I don't know. When were the dinosaurs around, bro?
Well, I actually had to look this up. Yeah, I'm Generation X.
Oy.
1965 to 1980.
Hey, nice.
Yeah. So I had to go and do some digging on this because I've got a bunch of kids who are Gen Z, but yeah. Anyway, they should have given me some good stuff. But Gen Zs are typically 1997 to 2002. So they
2012.
are 2012. Yeah, 1997 to 2012. And I guess to understand them, you have to understand where they come from and how they grow up, because that really informs what they're like. And so Gen Zs are those people who are what we call digital natives. So everything from socializing to shopping to learning is being done online their entire lives. So they prefer fast, efficient communication. They're used to text and DMs, and they slide into each other's DMs, and they spend hours talking to each other on socials. That's how they communicate. They're not so much into long emails and face-to-face conversations the same. And so quite different. And they're very smart technically. They just pick stuff up. It's just kind of obvious to them. They don't have to learn it. It's just what they do. So really technically savvy. And you think about when they've grown up, there's just been so much change. iPhones, phones in your hand, instant communications, all that stuff is come through in their lifetimes, and they've never known any different. So that really colours how they are. I mean, they're quite independent as well. They're sort of self-starters. So, unlike previous generations, you'd have to go to a classroom or an apprenticeship or buy a course or read a book. Well,
listen to tapes.
listen to tapes. Yeah, that's right. CDs, DVDs, even.
And my son asked me yesterday, he found an old cassette tape in a drawer. He's like, "What is this?" And I tried to explain to him what listening to a tape was about, and he just had no idea what I was talking about. He's like, "Why would you do that?"
Yeah. So why would you do anything analog?
Yeah.
Because you think of it, that's a good thing, because analog, you have to wait for things till they arrive. Digital, you can cut to where you want to straight away. That's a really important distinction for Gen Z, because they want it now, and they can, because it's digital. You can go to wherever you want. If you're listening to a podcast, you can go to the point you want. When we were kids, we'd have to fast forward, rewind. We could never find quite where it is. It's quite different, and that's quite a good symbol of what they're like. But they use YouTube. They can teach themselves how to do stuff by just going on YouTube and learning something, just like that, which is quite different to the way older generations were. They really value work-life balance, for real. So, they've seen their older siblings maybe, or their parents or grandparents slave really hard, work really hard, and really not enjoy life till they were later on. They've kind of made it, and they don't really buy into that old school 60-hour-a-week type thing to prove themselves. They believe that they should work smarter, not harder, and they should expect flexibility. They should be able to do what they want when they want, and they feel like if they can't do that, they're wasting time, and they're kind of wasting their life. So that's, I know that's frustrating when you're working with people, but that's where they're at, and so we need to understand that.
Well, I think on that one as well, man, it's like this is what's actually delivered to them all the time, because if you think about it, back in the day, you watched TV or you read a newspaper, and in that case, like, there were ads in there, and that was how you were targeted and how you were conditioned in your thinking, whereas that's the same today, only those ads are on YouTube or Facebook or Instagram or whatever. Wherever you're watching stuff, they still watch stuff, it's just on their phone and largely online. That still has ads, but a lot of those ads are, these days, it's online marketers and stuff which are telling them, hey, look, you should have work-life balance. Don't, overwork yourself. Focus on your mental health, all this kind of stuff. It's the stuff which is being absolutely driven down their throat at all times. So it's no surprise that they value that work-life piece, because it's what's marketed to them constantly. And it's a big linchpin of a lot of marketing is work-life balance. And obviously it's what everybody wants, but as a result, it's all they see in advertising, and so no surprise that it's top of mind for them.
Yeah, and they look at their parents and see what their parents have got with a nice 4-bedroom home with 2 bathrooms and holidays, and like, well, I should have that now.
Yeah. That now thing is very important for them as well. Like, if you think about this, as everything is right now these days. Like, if you want a date, you can go on Tinder and get one right now. If you want a pizza,
work required.
Yeah, you want a pizza, you just go online, order it, it'll be here very, very quick. You can go on Amazon, order something, and they got same day service. Like, there's no such thing as waiting. It doesn't exist for anything. You don't have to wait through a commercial. You can skip it. There is no such thing as waiting in any part of their life, and never has been. And so as a result, they've never actually learned to wait, apart from when they're in a queue at the airport, and that drives them nuts, like it does for anybody. But the thing is that you have to understand that, is that they've never actually learned to wait. And so, that's going to really actually come through in most of these points, right, is that theme of they don't have to wait, they've never had to wait, they've never learned to wait, and they can't deal with waiting.
Yeah, and what really cracks me up is when I watch TV with my children, some of whom are Gen Z, is they love the ads on a TV program. We're like, this sucks, like, we've had to put up with ads, and they see an ad and they're like, oh, I've never seen one of these before. This is amazing. I really want to watch the ads. Whereas, we'd be like, no, that's ridiculous. So they're quite different. They are more purpose-driven, so they really want to feel like what they do matters, whether that's making a difference in their community or the company with strong values. Or they want to connect to something bigger than themselves. They don't want to really feel like a cog in the machine, and they're not really prepared to, in the same way, and this is general, obviously, this is a generalization, whereas older generations were prepared to guts it out and be a cog in the machine so they could sort of climb up the machine, as it were.
Not only that, Tony, but if you think about it, as older generations either went through or were raised by people who went through very, very serious economic downturns. Yep. And so as a result, the whole thing of having a job was a privilege.
Yep.
And so, you were less purpose-driven, because you were like, no, my purpose is to go to work and do a good job so that I can keep my job, so that I can stay at the same company, so that I can have a career and have security and stability. But of course, that came from the experience of there being such instability, either in their own upbringing or in the upbringing of their parents. And so that's the values at the time. Whereas Gen Zs, even their parents haven't been through anything like that. And so the thing is the whole concept of, the purpose being to keep the job, it's not that. And so instead they're looking for purpose in so far as like, am I making an impact? Is this having an impact? Is this feeding you for greater good? And they're just looking for purpose, but they're having to look above the impact being that I keep my job, because that's not something that's ever been a real concern. And so you can see how that comes through.
Yeah. I mean, it's massive. So it's, in many ways, they're looking for similar things that everyone's looked for, but they just look for them and find them in different places.
100%.
Which is really helpful to understand where they're coming from. They do crave instant feedback and communication. So, they've grown up on the dopamine hit of likes, shares, comments on their socials. That really drives them. And so the same thing applies to their work. They don't want to wait 6 months for a review. They need to know quickly and often how they're going.
So if I could add to that as well, Tony, is like, if you think about likes, in particular, social media, you look at this as like, there is no dislike button. So when you look at this, it's like, if something is good, it requires praise in the form of a like. If something is bad, then the way that they know something is bad is no contact. And so, for older generations, it's like, if something was good, you might have got praise, and if something was bad, you would have had negative feedback. And anything, in the middle, if the boss doesn't talk to you, it's like, well, it must be doing pretty good. I'm probably middle of the road. Like maybe it was nothing exceptional. And so, and again, people of that older generation are going to give praise for exceptional work. Whereas, if you grew up with likes as, a measurement of whether something's good, then basically you need positive feedback very quickly for even just doing acceptable work, and no contact or no feedback means dislike. So the thing is that they have a much different range of feedback preference. It's very, very narrow. And so as a result, like, you might think, oh, well, everything's great, so, I haven't bought anything up with them. To them, they're feeling like you're mad at them.
And they might think you don't care as well, that lack of, it's the same if they don't get likes and comments on their socials. It's like, well, nobody values me. I'm worthless, and that comes through into the work environment as well.
100%.
So very different from previous generations. I think they're, in general, probably less loyal to employers in the sense that they just don't stick around for the sake of it. They see people switching jobs frequently for what's in it for me, what something that I can connect to for purpose. They don't have that kind of that work ethic idea as like, well, I'll do my time and then I'll get rewarded for what I'm doing here. It's quite different to that, and so that can make them seem a little bit, what's the word, flaky or self-interested, but it's just different. And if you do invest in their development and you treat them well, they're kind of going to be like everyone else.
Well, dude, the job market is just so very different. Like, the supply and demand of jobs is way out of whack with what it used to be. I mean, back in the day, you used to have really only a handful of jobs you could do. Like, you go and work in a manufacturing plant, or you become a tradesman, or you be a doctor or a lawyer or engineer. Whereas nowadays there are jobs which there are so many more jobs, and so there are so many more options, and as a result, like, they have so many more choices, and the supply of jobs is so high, it actually exceeds demand a lot of the time. There's way more jobs than there are people. And so actually for the by and large, they do have a lot of choice. And so it's easy to be flaky because, back in the day it was like, oh, I'll quit my job at the meat packing plant, and it's like, well, where are you going to go work? Another meat packing plant? By the way, now you got to travel a couple of hours to the next town or something. So you had less choices, and so you had less leverage. The thing is, the choices are so abundant now. And you can do so many jobs where it's like it's actually quite leveraged. You can be an influencer and stuff like that. So they have more choices. No wonder they're flakier.
Yeah, well, they're flakier. That's probably something we can talk about, because I'm not sure they're flakier, but they're definitely different, and it seems flakier to us. I think something else that's wrapped around here that we probably don't think about a lot is, society today is actually incredibly affluent. And we don't understand it. We think people are poorer than they ever have been, but that's actually not true. It's actually complete rubbish. If you think about 50 years ago, the standard of living compared to what it is today, it's way higher today. You go 100 years ago, it's completely different. 200 years ago, most people couldn't even feed themselves. And so they are more affluent. They've got more choices around discretionary stuff rather than just figuring out how they're going to eat and find a place to live. And so there's more stuff they think about as well, which makes them think about some of these other issues like purpose and all this sort of stuff. And I'm not saying there aren't people who aren't struggling. For sure they are. But in general, the affluence created by some of the technologies and production systems for food, etc., is actually pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And so it's changed the whole social environment. And I think it's important to understand that when you're actually leading these Gen Z people, because that's going to help you see where they're coming from and realize that, well, maybe they're not completely crazy.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I mean, again, the better we understand where someone's coming from, the easier it is to lead them and to understand, like I said, they're different. They're not worse, and so no particular generation is actually better than another. It's funny they talk about, golden generation or this generation was so awesome and they did so much good for the world. And I'm like, yeah, cool. Every generation has pluses and minuses. And the real key to actually be a good leader is to understand where your people come from so that you can lead them best and get the best out of them. That's really the whole job. And so it doesn't matter, how old or which generation your team come from. You need to understand where they're coming from. And then that way you can adapt, because honestly, they won't. And that's fine. They don't have to. It's actually not their responsibility. This is very much like parenting, like when you're parenting, it's like your kids are going to be difficult at times, and it'll be great if they'd meet you halfway. But honestly, they won't, and it's not their responsibility. They shouldn't have to. You are the parent. You are the bigger person. It's your job to adapt first and set an example of being able to work with people from different backgrounds or different viewpoints. Now, if you can set that example, the reciprocity kicks in, and they'll probably do the same in return. But you're going to have to move first, and you're going to have to move significantly. It's your responsibility as a leader to do that. You can't just expect them to be different because they won't, and they shouldn't have to. And that goes for any generation.
Yeah, and just on that, it's not even that if you're thinking about expecting them to be different, you're basically, it's rage against the machine because society is different. So society is not going to change just to suit you and your business.
Yeah,
you got to actually get real about this. It's like Blockbuster and Netflix. It's changed. It's different. You can go back if you want to, but no one's going to put that genie back in the bottle. So you might as well get on board.
Well, again, you can beg for Blockbuster to come back, but good luck finding a VCR. So
right. I've got one at home.
Oh, well, I don't know why.
Six head.
Dude, we're moving house, and I was packing up CDs to move to my new house, and I realized I don't have a CD player. Like, this is ridiculous. So gave him to the op shop. What do?
There you go.
Well, should we get into how is Gen Z different and what can we do about it?
Yeah, well, we've sort of touched on this. They are really tech savvy. They expect digital, competence or integration, if you like. And so the challenge is that they've grown up with instant access to information, automation, digital tools, and they get frustrated with slow stuff that's not online. So if you're still relying on paperwork and clunky processes, and that, they're just going to, they're going to tune out in your business. So you need to really think about how you use your job software. Get them all involved in that. If you don't have that, you need to, because I know it might be difficult for some of your older tradies and journeymen, but man, the young guys are the future. So you need to get on board, and whether that's a Service Titan or Simpro or Tradify, whatever it is, Service Fusion, you really need to get that stuff up and running. Encourage them to improve the processes. Get them involved in the process of how to make things better tech-wise. Get them to start playing with AI, how you can use it in your business. They'll do it way faster, way smarter than you. And if you can actually get them involved in that process, then they'll take ownership, and they'll be really excited. They'll feel purpose, and they'll feel like this is a place where they can land and they can do their thing. So I think that's really important. That's a real opportunity for your business to push it ahead. I think also they really, like I said, instant feedback and comms. So, you got to think about how you can actually reach them where they're at, and that, if they likes, comments and shares, instant messaging, sending them a WhatsApp or a text or whatever it is when they do work, and just regularly checking in with them, that's going to be massive. Because if they don't get any feedback, they're just going to assume you don't care, or they're just doing a rubbish job. So that's something you can do quite proactively.
I think part of that as well is you might have said this before, I might have just missed it, Tony, but also when you're given that quick feedback, is you can keep it really casual. So, much like liking somebody's photo or post, it's pretty casual. It's even a little bit transactional at times. If you're looking at it from the perspective of someone from an older generation, because when you're dealing with people from some of the older generations, they're going to want praise far less frequently, but when you give it, it's got to be quite meaningful, like really explained and thoughtful, and you explain how what they did is going to be beneficial, and all of that kind of stuff. It has to be quite in depth. That's what they're looking for, but it can be way less frequent. It just is more impactful when you do it. Whereas on the other hand, with the Gen Zs, You want a much higher frequency, but it can be much more casual. For example, hey, nice work, or hey, this is going really well, or hey, I noticed you did this thing well. That's great. Just like short things, and it can be like messages, text messages, Facebook Messenger, whatever. Like, and that's going to do the trick. So it's about it can be a lot more casual, a lot less in depth, but it's a lot more frequent. So that's really the difference.
Huge, and like you said, little and often. It's like just topping up the emotional bank account as well. And so maybe just diary that into your calendar to do that every week or every few days is a great idea. I think the work-life balance thing is important. So, if you expect them to grind like you did and work nights and weekends and all that sort of stuff, you probably have a problem with this. And it's probably not great for you either, honestly, if you think about it. So there's probably something to learn from Gen Z here to redress that balance of just slaving yourself into the ground, because that approach has probably got you to a place that's a little bit frustrating anyway and worn out. So, focus on productivity for them, not hours worked. So how well they do the job and how quickly they do the job. Be a bit flexible, like if they want to start early or finish early, or maybe you think about 4-day weeks, or there's a whole bunch of ways you can be flexible here that could really make your business attractive to Gen Z people relative to your competitors.
Now, this doesn't mean bend over backwards and let them work wherever they want. No. It just, it's just a little bit of flexibility, right?
Yeah, for sure. So that's important, and make sure they're not doing stuff that's just completely boring. Like if you've got, and I know again people have to earn their chops, and so there's a balance here. But you've just brought on someone who's an apprentice, and all they do is dig holes for 4 months. That's probably not going to work.
Key difference though is that back in the day you used to be able to be like, mate, you're in your first year, all you're going to do is dig holes, and people just be like, okay. Whereas nowadays it's like, hey, you're in your first year, you're going to dig holes. But the reason you're going to dig holes is because it's going to get you to here, and then you're going to learn this, and then you're going to. What they want is the pathway. They really want to be able to see how what I'm doing right now, even if it's not super meaningful, is meaningful because it's a step on the journey towards something better. If they can see that, then they're fine with the slightly less meaningful task today. Yeah. Whereas people from older generations will fine just plugging away doing the less meaningful thing, and they're like, hey, look, things will change and improve when they do. And they were just a lot more patient. Whereas like you can temper that impatience by showing how it's part of a bigger picture. That's going to be really important for Gen Z.
It is, and that's about purpose, and they really need to understand the why, which is what you're getting at. And so it's things like, well, if they are digging holes, explain to them why you dig the hole this way, and what impact that has on the bigger picture, like how that impacts the next person who does the job in the business, how that impacts the customer, how that impacts the digger operator or who's bringing the materials, and how they're going to lay the pipes and stuff. So really explain all of that so that people understand that, okay, that's why I do it this way, and there's a context. And then obviously, as you said, what's the next steps in that process, so they can put it in a context and feel good about that. Giving them responsibility, small things to own is very important. And if they can be part of the problem solving, they really love that. Like maybe share the problems with them, get them their input. Now, obviously, it's probably not going to be that helpful to start with, but if they feel like they can have a say, then that's important for them as well. Whereas, earlier days, people are probably just happy to do their time, punch the clock, and know that if they keep doing that, they'll be rewarded just for being loyal and doing the job.
Yeah,
it's different now.
I think again, like don't balk at the responsibility. A lot of the time we think, well, I can't make this person a manager. They're a first year apprentice.
No,
that's not what we're talking about, right? Like what we're talking about is just let them have ownership on the task that they're doing. So, my son George, he's 7. He's responsible for organising the shoe rack at home. I mean, like honestly, like he doesn't do that good of a job, and he's 7. It's just organising a shoe rack. It's not a big deal, but like he takes a lot of pride in that. He works real hard on it, and it's cool, So I think it's like just let them feel responsibility and ownership of the task they do have, and that actually is going to tick that pretty well. So I think that's big.
And I think we sort of touched on this, but to really drill down on it, if you're bringing an apprentice on, lay out the journey over the next 4 to 6 years for where they'll be. This is what they'll do. This is what you can expect to be paid. This is the responsibility you can expect to have, and lay it out for them really clearly so it's written and they can read it and know where they fit in. That will make a huge difference to them rather than just talking to them about it when they join and then it never really going over it again, which is honestly what happens a lot. It's kind of really ad hoc.
It's easy to forget, right? Like you just think, oh, well, people just get on with it, right? But I mean, the Gen Zs, they need that. They need those chats.
Well, you're busy trying to run your business and you're like, well, I'm busy and I've got too much to deal with and I probably know I should do this, but they'll be fine and they'll wait till next week till I get around to it. That's not going to fly here. And in fact, with anybody, it's probably not a great strategy, to be honest. But the Gen Zs are much more sensitive here. And so it's more important that you do a good job with this sort of thing.
Well, that's the thing, is everybody actually needs that. It's just that Gen Zs will openly ask for it, and they'll be openly upset if they don't get it, whereas a lot of people will just swallow that down and pretend they're not upset about it, which is actually not good for them either. So, I mean, look, the benefit of this is at least they tell you they're unhappy about it, and you can do something, whereas a lot of older generations, they may still be unhappy, but they'll never tell you. They just pretend they're not, which is actually worse, because then you can't do anything about it.
100%. Loyalty, we've talked about that, I think, as well. That's got to be earned. You can't just expect it. So, whereas before people were grateful for a job, they knew that there was a rite of passage before they'd get to where they wanted to be and to levels of responsibility and earning. It's not like that anymore. They want it now because they're used to having it now. Now, we can debate the rights and wrongs of that, and there's definitely some things that Gen Zs can learn from other cultures, and we'll dig into those. But you really do need to recognise good work. You need to create a strong culture where they feel connected, they've got friends at work, they feel like it's a good social climate for them as well, and that you respect their ideas. Like, listen and acknowledge. Really listen and acknowledge to what they're saying. And sometimes it might be crazy, but you'll be surprised how good it is. I mean, I've got a 16-year-old son, and he's been watching some of our ads on Instagram, and he's texted me and said, "Dad, this ad's not very good. This is rubbish. Like, this is not good at all." And I'm like, "Sure, son." And he sends me a message about, voice message about why it's not good. I watched it. I'm like, "Yeah, you're right, mate. This is actually mud." And he had a bunch of suggestions. And so that's what they like. And often they're really on point because we don't see things the same as they do. And it's actually their world now. And so that can be really helpful for us as well. And honestly, they think differently. They learn differently. So you've just got to give them the opportunity to do that. There's no point sitting them down in a classroom for hours on end. Much better to learn things online quickly. Like to try things out. That's much more important for them. They learn by doing. I think even things like universities and stuff are probably becoming less relevant. You can start a business straight away and get up and running. You don't need to go to a business school nowadays because most of it's online, and the people at university don't know how to do it anyway. So you just learn by doing. So it's quite different. You've got to factor that in your leadership style. Yeah,
100%. Well, shall we get into lessons that Gen Z could learn from us? Because I think this is a two-way street. There's stuff that we need to learn from them and that we need to adapt to. There's also stuff that can be reciprocal. We can give back to them too.
Yeah, there is, and this is where you get to mentor them and help them with some of the deficits that occur from being a Gen Z, and we can see what some of those are. They're obviously used to instant gratification, everything now, not necessarily having to guts things out like other people have, and so that can lead to a lack of resilience sometimes, and they really feel the knocks, and they get, there's a lot more mental health issues and depression and anxiety. So for us, there's some things we can teach them, and I think we can really help them understand that hard work and resilience matter, that you'll get stuff if you continually work hard at it. You can't, you might want it now, but it's probably going to take a bit more than that. So I think that's super helpful.
Well, there's lots of practical application to that. Like a lot of the time with Gen Zs, they'll do, learn a new skill and they instantly want to be paid more. Whereas, what they need to learn is that it's not in the learning of the skill, it's being able to have, successfully replicated that skill time and time again, day in, day out for, a period of time. That's when I know you've got it covered. It's not when you learned it the first time, because you could forget it again. And I mean, I think again, Gen Z can often undervalue experience. They'll say performance is what matters, and if I'm performing the same tasks as someone else at the same level as them, we should be paid the same, have the same opportunities. And they don't like to talk about tenure or experience because they feel it's irrelevant. And I can see the one side of the coin there, but the thing that they often miss, and this is something that is an important lesson, for them to learn, is experience is really important. If I think about if you were going out to sea on a ship, and you're picking your crew, and you're picking some guys that are they're red hot, they're really really good at what they do, but they've never ever been at sea in a storm, or they've never been in rough conditions. They've only ever performed on a ship in nice smooth sailing. Well, I'm a bit worried about that, because it's not that you'll perform any better or worse in these quiet conditions. It's like, well, you've never been through these tough conditions, and if this person has and they have that experience, then the value is not in what's happening right now. It's in what could happen, and the fact that they can deal with it and have proven they can. And I think that's an important learning, for everybody, but in particular for Gen Zs, because honestly, a lot of the time they just actually haven't had the opportunity yet to go through some harder times and see how they'll handle it. And so
and
that's natural.
Yeah, there's no doubt that hard times make strong people. And so that's important. Just with these lessons, though, don't try and teach them these lessons before you've understood them. Like if you're going 100%. Hot with these lessons, you really need to meet them where they're at. That'll build the rapport, the trust, the respect, and then you have the opportunity to mentor them with this stuff. Another one that's really important is they're used to instant messaging, SMS, social messaging, social media. Teach them the value of face-to-face comms. They really do count for tough conversations where you can get the nuance of the conversation. You can read body language. I mean, a lot of these people today don't understand body language. They get the wrong end of the stick from a direct message because there's no language around it. They might take offense when there's no offense given. And so teach them that if they want to have meaningful conversations, like with their partner, for example, or their family or a work colleague or their boss, that actually it's probably good to sit down face to face and learn how to just do that, belly to belly stuff, because that really is the way that real communication happens.
Not to mention, again, it's a two-way street, so we want to be able to adapt to them, and a lot of the world is going in new ways, and they're going to be a lot more equipped for that. But also a huge overwhelming portion of the population is not Gen Z. And so for them to be successful and have a great life and be happy, they're going to also need to learn to adapt the other way. And so while they might value an instant message, one of their older colleagues is really going to value sitting down and having an actual chat. And shaking hands and making contact with each other. And so it's like, yeah, cool, that person could adapt and send a message sometimes, but it's not a one-way street. They have to adapt back the other way as well, or honestly, they're going to come up against some pretty big challenges themselves.
For sure.
And it'll cause a lot of hurt. So, this is a good thing you can mentor them on.
It's a good two-way street. Something else that I think is important, a lot of the Gen Zs are driven by their feelings, which is cool, but there can be a lot of danger in following your feelings all the time, and so I think we can help them, look at their feelings, be a bit more objective if they're really frustrated with a job or they're frustrated with another team member, and they're like, oh, I'm going to leave because that guy's an idiot. Actually talk to them and say, well, can we talk through how they're making you feel? What's the situation? How are you dealing with it? What else could this mean? And really get them to unpack that so they can, okay, well, I'm a little bit more objective about what's going on here and I can make a better decision just rather than being triggered by how I'm feeling, which is a really dangerous way to live your life because be aware of your feelings, but, man, you can't trust those things sometimes because they're giving you some, telling you some lies sometimes, like they're just not to be believed at times.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, lastly as well, like loyalty and patience really do lead to rewards. And so I think, again, helping them understand that it's like we were saying earlier, sometimes you just need to do something for a period of time and, back it up and be patient and the rewards will come. Like not everything has to be right now. And actually so many things in life are not right now. And again, like we said earlier, so many things in life are a lot quicker these days, but certain things still take time and always will. An oak tree is always going to take 100 years to grow. And so the fact is like there's some things which will never change. You do have to wait to reap the rewards. And I think, while we can adapt the one way in terms of, some things can come faster, they also need to eventually learn that some things do take time. And often the best things take time.
They do. And like a really good example here, to really get your head around this is you might have an apprentice who's really capable and they wire a hot water system for you, your hot water heater, and they do it once and they do a great job. And they're like, well, I should be paid like a tradesperson for doing that. I'm smashing it out. And you're like, that's fine, but I need to be able to rely on you to do that for a year in all conditions when you're frustrated and when you're tired and when the client's difficult. So I know that you've got it locked down totally. That's when they've really achieved mastery. Yeah. And that's when they'll be rewarded for understanding the skill, not for just doing it once and doing it right once.
Yeah.
That's really what you're looking for.
100%. Well, I think we've covered some great stuff, so should we land this plane?
Let's do it. Managing Gen Zs doesn't have to be a headache. Now, Gen Zs bring lots of skills and new perspectives that are crucial in today's economy. The key is to grow your leadership skills to bring the best out in the Gen Z employees that you have, whilst helping them learn some of the important lessons around work ethic and persistence that have helped you succeed. Thanks heaps for listening. We'll catch you all again next time.
See you later.
Congratulations on being part of a select group of savvy business owners who are taking their businesses to the next level. And to help you on your journey, don't forget to check out our show notes for a copy of our free book, The Profitable Tradie, and other valuable resources.
Thanks for being a part of this special group, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Profitable Tradie podcast.